So this film story begins 800 years ago in an old desert. We see a spaceship. Due to the landing of the spaceship, there is a terrible storm in the desert, and the people nearby start running to save their lives. Among the people who ran, there was a girl whose necklace fell to the ground while running. After the scene cuts, the story comes to the present time. 800 years have passed. The place where this spaceship landed, there is a search going on at the same place where the girl was, and the girl gets the same necklace, which fell from the neck of the girl. The professor says while investigating that this necklace is very old, and it may be very valuable. He is happy to know this. After a while, a man named John comes there who says that whatever you get here is mine. In response, he says, "Where are you from? And whatever we get from here will belong to the Chinese government." John leaves. From there we know that he and his professor's team have been researching here for many years, and after the research they found out that there was a city called Loulan hundreds of years ago. They also found some pieces of wood there which made the map of the city of Loulan. Looking at this map and the necklace of the girl, the professor made a story. The condition of the city below the ground was telling him that there must have been a famine there 800 years ago, and this necklace was only worn by the monk at that time. There was a monk and his religious master was a girl, and she had this necklace. When the famine struck, the monk ran towards the temple, but then he died in the storm. The scene cuts to the past where we see the same monk about whom he and his team were talking. The monk's name was Yaman. He was running away from the storm with his companion Jinn. These people reached the temple with difficulty, but Jinn's condition was very bad. We know that Jinn was the king of the city of Loulan, but now his condition was bad. He was breathing his last, and during this time he says to Yaman that it is not a good person to stay away from my brother. Yaman is killed and Jinn goes inside the temple. She was praying to God that please God save this city from famine. As she was praying, the lamps in the temple were burning, and suddenly a bright light came out of the glass inside the temple as if it was the sun, and then suddenly the glass fell on the ground and breaks. Yaman thinks that God wants to say something to him through this glass, but the scene cuts to the present. We see Wu in the present. Wu and his professor's team were going back to the university after collecting all the old things from the city of Loulan, unknowingly that there was someone behind them or two people hiding in their train who were actually with their enemy. John wanted to keep all the things from the city of Loulan because the city of Loulan had finished 8 to 10 years ago, and if in today's time someone is happy with it, then he will be given a big reward from the government. John wanted to get all the things from the city of Loulan and get the reward from the government. It is shown that the men of June were going to shoot Wu because Lu had saved the things from the city of Loulan before they kill Wu. Suddenly all the passengers on the train stand up. They had pistols in their hands, and we came to know that they were Chinese soldiers who picked up both their companions and threw them out of the train, after which Wu starts checking his stuff. As soon as he opens the suitcase, he sees the same mirror that we saw 800 years ago near Yemen. He got scared when he saw this mirror because it was broken, and he thought maybe it happened because of him. But he doesn't know the truth that this mirror is broken. He brought this mirror to his house even after trying a lot. But the mirror doesn't connect. In the scene we are shown Yemen again, who was praying to God to fix everything. As soon as he prays, we see that there is a weird magic happening in the mirror, and the mirror starts connecting itself in the present time. The mirror of Wu also started connecting. Suddenly he hears a girl's voice. He looks around. There was no girl there, so he got scared. And when he looked at the mirror, he saw Yemen through this mirror. Yemen was able to see Wu, and she was able to see Yemen. It was clear that this mirror had connected the two timelines. Yemen thinks that she is a god, and how did she get inside this mirror? To find out the answer, he starts looking at Yemen's background. He sees some pictures in Yemen's background. He saw these pictures on the map of Loulan City, and now he understood without wasting time that this mirror has connected the two timelines, and he can see Loulan City 800 years ago. He tells Yemen that he is not a god but a common man who is talking to the future. He asks Yemen, "Can you show me your aid kit?" Yemen does this, after which he asks Yemen a lot of questions about Loulan City, and Yemen answers all his questions, the things that people wanted to know about Loulan City through Yemen. Wu was able to find out. He was very happy to know all this. He found all the answers, but before he could ask Yemen anything else, he sees that Yemen is not feeling well. He goes to his fridge to get something to eat and gives it to Yemen. Yemen also puts her hand inside the mirror, grabs it, and starts eating it. This was a very interesting story. Yemen had never eaten anything like this before. While eating, Yemen starts talking to Wu, and after a while, there is a good understanding between them. After this, Yemen writes a book on Loulan City to do such a big research. Wu is given a big reward from the government in this ceremony. We see that John was also very surprised by Wu's success. He was not able to understand how he found out so many truths so quickly. He understands that there is a secret behind this anyway. We see that he goes back to his house, and through the mirror, he contacts Yemen again. He asks, "What happened to you?" Yemen replies that there has been a big destruction here. Our king was very bad earlier. The king here used to be a Jinn. He was very merciful, but then his brother betrayed him and took over the government, after which this city is going towards destruction. Yemen tells Wu about the spaceship which we saw landing in the past at the start of the story. Yemen tells him that a flying object has come to us which the bad king wants to kill. He understands that Yemen is talking about aliens. They must have come here in a spaceship, and the king must have killed the aliens when they were talking. We see that Wu's companion was outside the door. We hear all their conversations before Wu comes in. John's people kidnap him, and now through this girl, John finds out the secret of Wu, that how he wrote a book on Loulan City so quickly. That's why John sends his 2 men to his house to steal the mirror. Here we see that Wu was sleeping with the mirror. He doesn't keep the mirror away from him because he fell in love with Yemen without seeing Yemen, without talking to him. He couldn't sleep through this mirror. Yemen became a part of his life, a very important part. Every night, Wu used to recite a poem to him. He couldn't sleep even after sleeping with Yemen. He used to keep looking at Yemen now, even in his dreams. Yemen used to come here. We see that John's 2 men sneaked into Wu's house. But luckily, Wu found out about their arrival, and he ran away from the window behind his room with his mirror. He hid on the side and tried to tell Yemen his condition through the mirror, and how a man named John was behind him. Before he could say anything else, John puts his hand on Wu's shoulder and takes the mirror from his hand. John's men catch Wu, while on the other side, we see that even in Yemen's temple, Loulan's bad king's soldiers caught Yemen, and because of their separation, the portal of this mirror was closed. Yemen is now taken to the king, and the king asks him about the truth of this mirror. Yemen doesn't say anything, but his soldiers say that this is a magical mirror through which we can go to heaven, but only Yemen can open this mirror because it is a curse. The king now takes Yemen to the temple of God. This wasn't the temple of God, but it was an alien spaceship in which they killed the aliens and tied them up in the present. We see that John is taking Wu to the alien spaceship, while 800 years ago, the same thing was happening with Yemen. The king was asking him to open the portal of the mirror at different times. Both Yemen and Wu climb onto the alien spaceship, and as soon as they take the mirror and go in front of their mouths, a storm of light begins to come from a portal opens here, and both timelines meet, because of which now Wu and Yemen were able to see each other. As soon as he sees Yemen, he hugs her. Yemen was also emotional because Yemen also started loving her after this. He takes Yemen away from him and says, "Everything will be fine, don't worry." John gets angry seeing all this, and in anger, he shoots John by shooting him. The portal closed. On the other hand, 800 years ago, the king's soldiers also captured Yemen, and as soon as the portal closed, the king and his soldiers came to the world of the future. It is shown that Yemen was 800 years ago, and as soon as the king came here, the portal was closed. The bad king asks John, "Is this heaven?" John says, "Yes, this is heaven, and I am your God." Hearing this, the bad king gets angry because he wants to become God himself, and as soon as he becomes God, he takes his soldier's weapon and kills one of John's men. In this way, a war breaks out between John and the king. The king's soldiers had old weapons, while John's people had ordinary pistols. Before the war between them took a different form suddenly, a storm of prosperity comes here, and all of them get stuck in this storm. Luckily, Wu and his companions, who had already run away from here. After the scene is cut, we are shown a scene from many years later. Wu is now old. He has come here again because research is still going on here. Another team was doing research here, and they found more old things. Wu picked one of them and looked at it. There was something written in an ancient language. After talking to Yemen, he knew the ancient language on the stone. The same poem was written which was told to Yemen in ancient times. Yemen wrote this, and when he sees this, he gets tears in his eyes, and while looking at this piece, he realized that Yemen did not die that day. She was alive and spent the rest of her life remembering her. He also smiles while remembering Yemen, and this movie story ends here.